Welcome to the Global Discussion, a discussion with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. My name is Simon Hodgkins. Today, a real pleasure to be joined by Jamie Mackenzie. You're very welcome to the show, Jamie. Let's start. Let's get you to tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for our worldwide audience.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you so much for inviting me onto the podcast first and foremost, and hello to all of the global listeners that you have. Um, just a little bit, maybe a bit about me, and we can always dive into my backstory as well. It's always an interesting when I certainly start talking about sprouts, Brussels sprouts, as it were. So I'm personally I'm a family man. I'm a sort of proud father of two boys, 6 and 9, a wife, and a recent owner to a new puppy. So it does feel like I've got a newborn, a newborn in the house at the moment. And I live on the southeast coast down by the seaside. But from a professional standpoint, my journey's changed a lot over the last 18 months. But to explain as I am today, I'm self-employed. I'm an experienced board level leader, having worked with some big brands over the last 20 years. I'm a two-time best-selling author over the last 12 months with two books we can sort of unpack, as it were. And I do a lot of international keynote speaking, as well as coaching support, project and fractional support for businesses as well. Everything I do now, and for those watching on YouTube, you can tell by the green, is all centered around helping businesses and individuals grow through the power of storytelling. So growth and storytelling are two things that have been part of my life, certainly over the last 43 years, but certainly over the last 20 years in business. And it's just something that I'm incredibly passionate about, that I've rediscovered now, that I'm hoping to bring, to people and businesses in what I do. So that's a very much a surface level overview of me and what I do, but we can unpack all of that when I'd love to share.
Well, thank you, Jamie. And let's get straight into it then. You mentioned the humble Brussels sprout, and let's talk about stories change lives,
Yeah.
sprouting happiness, and 28 bags of sprouts. What are we talking about?
It's okay. It's certainly my marketing experience and branding coming into it. But it all started in what it was 19 no just sorry, the year 2000 was when it started, and I was invited into an interview for a placement year during my time at university at Toshiba. And in fact, on the way up to the interview, I actually thought I was going to be applying for a role at a Japanese car manufacturer, but that way it shows I hadn't done my research at the time, clearly. But I went in and I got interviewed and subsequently got the role. And when I was sitting down on my first day with the two managers, I asked them the question, what is it about the interview that kind of made you want to employ me? Because it certainly wasn't the dodgy suit I was wearing at the time as a student. And they said, Jamie, it's your story about Brussels sprouts that got you the job. And so take it back another couple of years before that, I'd been working in my kind of mid-teens to earn a bit of money at a local greengrocers. And on one particular Christmas Eve, I was working in the shop and we were selling tons and tons of Brussels sprouts. It was going absolutely mental. Back in the days where you had local greengrocers, right, and not supermarkets. And anyway, we had such an amazing day with it. I was just filling these up all day. Went into the yard at the back at the close of the day, really interested to see how many bags we sold, pulled all the green nets out, and sure enough, we'd sold 28 bags of sprouts. Now, we didn't hold records at the time, but my boss, I remember saying to me, Jamie, I'm pretty sure that that's a record. Now, I shared this story when the interviewers asked me the question, what are you most proud of, professionally so far? And it's the one thing that sprung to mind. And because of the way I told that story, the passion behind it, the enthusiasm, the authentic me that shone through, they were like, we wanted to work with you because of who you were. We felt you could really fit in the culture. We just really liked how you responded to that question. It was none of the theory stuff that I was learning at university, Porter's five forces or Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It was all about that. And at that point, at that early age for me, I realized in that moment how important stories were and how storytelling was. And then throughout the next 20 years, Simon, what I did was I just decided to employ more of a storytelling approach in every communication that I did. Whether it be an email, whether it be a creation of a new brand, whether it be a conversation, whether it be public speaking, whatever communication I was doing, which is tons every single day, I brought this model of what I call the sprout model, or a sprouting approach, into all of my communications. So fast forward to a year and a half ago, when I took the decision to step away from a role that I'd been in for a good 10 years at Pluxee as CMO. And prior to that, I was heading up marketing, B2B marketing for Samsung, and then Toshiba, but before that in product. I was like, what do I do? And I was inspired by this story. And it's only when you sit down and reflect sometimes you realize what you have. And I had this passion for storytelling, and I really truly realized that I'd used it throughout my life to grow, to take chances, to take opportunities, succeed and fail and learn at the same time. So I said, right, I'm going to turn that into a book. I'm going to turn this story into a book, and the model that I've been using for years. And as you said, my first book, 28 Bags of Sprouts, Storytelling with Impact, became a top 5 bestseller on Amazon, still performing really well 1 year on. And that was kind of my first step into writing, doing anything like this. But it was something that I kind of wanted to do and share. Went really well. But the whole journey of my change over the last 18 months, I also felt was a really lovely story to share, and also I recognized, because the reason for my change, I should say, is that I was getting to a stage of unhappiness in what I was doing and my lifestyle and many different things. And so I said, I need to change. So I made that jump. And I've really talked about in my second book, Sprouting Happiness, the 5 Branches to a Happy and Balanced Life, how I've made personal choices and the 5 big areas that I've shifted in order to focus on my long-lasting happiness and grow in that way. And also stories from like 29 other people as well. So with that book, with the taste of the first one, I really wanted to incorporate the conversation around sprouting, growth within this. And sure enough, that's now led on to a broader portfolio of what I do as Jamie Mackenzie Stories Change Lives, centered all around growth and storytelling. And of course, the humble Brussels sprout has been the starting point for me more formally recently, but actually not realizing it, over 20 years ago, it set me on a pathway that has led to today. So yeah, stories have changed lives for me. I believe that every communication moment like today is an opportunity to make something, to change something, to create something. And I think that the more that people bring that into their day-to-day interactions and narrative, the greater the positive growth that can come from it. So that is the story of the Brussels sprout, the story of my greenness, and you know what? And it just helps me to be unique and be myself, which is really important to me.
No, and it's a great lesson in that sort of genuine, authentic storytelling. I know we hear that word a lot, authentic, but also the passion behind it, and how people, even back then, could feel that and sense that, and it helped you stand out, right? And good
Yeah,
stories always cut through the noise and resonate with people. Now, you mentioned, a few really big companies there, like Toshiba,
yeah,
doing the product marketing for those guys, and Samsung Group, they're probably in over 80 countries at this
yeah,
stage, 400,000 people. And you sort of looked after a lot of their B2B vertical, you looked after a lot of their product marketing. So that was a
yeah.
huge, big executive role. And then, as well as that, you mentioned Pluxee in the UK,
Mhm.
and you were
Yeah,
the CMO there, right? And a
yeah.
board member. So, how do you go from that um, to deciding, no, actually, I want to be a best-selling author. Actually, I want to be a speaker and a coach, because it wasn't as though your career trajectory had been slow at that point. You were working with some of the biggest brands in the world at the
Yeah,
boardroom level, in the
yeah,
C-suite. So,
yeah.
what changed?
That's a really good question. That is a very good question. And you're absolutely right. I have enjoyed a really strong trajectory from an early age. And I've never classed myself ever as being super intellectual or academic, but I have prided myself on being able to engage with people and being, technically strong when I need to, when I apply myself. And that's been part of my approach for my whole career. And as I said, storytelling as well. I'd enjoyed that rise, and I'd had senior exposure early. And in some respects, in my first 20 years, I've kind of had the exposure that maybe you traditionally have in the second 20 years, maybe, from a traditional corporate ladder perspective. I felt I got to a point where I'd hit a place where I maybe wanted to control my own destiny now. First and foremost. Secondly, not that I couldn't achieve more. That's absolutely not the case. But I felt that for me to grow as a person, I needed to do something different. Because in many respects, I was doing the same cycles in different, albeit big brands, big projects, good resources, great people, great teams. But I was recycling everything constantly. And while there were moments of change for me, I had to shift and do something different. And the final element was where I became more unhappy towards the end was the lifestyle of that type of trajectory is tough, especially if you have a young family. And what you find is yourself moving away or getting pulled away from those moments that maybe will mean more to you later in life than certainly in your 20s and 30s. So certainly through that 20 and 30s trajectory, our influence, financial, everything was super important to me. But when you get the family, suddenly things change. And that was kind of the final trigger, let's say, that made me reflect and realize. So I go from what is a great trajectory, security, and great badges and people around me to now being on my own. And is it the scariest thing I've ever done? I've done a bungee jump before, and that was scary, but this is a very different type of scary. I'll be very honest with you. And so, but it boiled down essentially to, was I happy in what I was doing at that stage? No, and that's no reflection on the company or the role. It was just where I was at personally, and I had to make a jump. I never said I want to become an author. I do want to do speaking. Public speaking is my favorite job in the world. I absolutely adore it. And I do love working with people and helping and serving people. So a lot of what I'm doing now fits naturally to what I'm doing. But I never said I want to do this, this, and this, certainly not the book front. The book originally was just like I just need to decompress. And it's resulting in what I'm doing now. But to add to that, I'm also currently working on 2 children's books as well, to all stories and storytelling to help educate the importance of storytelling in children in schools. And again, that's another side project that I'm working on at the moment. Again, would never have thought I'd be doing it. So I need to make a change. I've made a bold move. Will it work out? Who knows? Am I enjoying it? Absolutely, 100%. And I'd never look back, for sure. So I hope that answered the question. You really threw me with it. It's a great question, Simon. And I think, sometimes you need to sometimes you need to recalibrate yourself. I feel you can get really caught up, and I had to recalibrate myself and choose the alignment to my purpose as opposed to alignment to a more financial trajectory, if I'm honest. And purpose is more important for me now at this stage of my life.
It's wonderful to hear, and thank you so much indeed for explaining that. Because some people end up on the corporate ladder for life, and then get to the top of the ladder and realize the ladder, as the cliche says, is leaning against the wrong wall.
Yes.
And it is
Yeah.
really, I'm always fascinated by people who said, no, hang on, I'm going to make it it's a life change. It's a big decision, right?
Yeah.
I love the word recalibration. And
Yeah.
of course, a couple of best-selling books doesn't hurt, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But can I ask you a bit about your target audience and your sort of
Mhm.
customers? You mentioned this new project with education, and I was going to
Yeah.
ask you about that. But before we get into that, a little bit about, when you're doing the speaking, when you're a coach, when you're an executive leader, who's the audience that you're really trying to tap into ideally?
So I kind of, it breaks across kind of for me three areas, and it's a difficult one because I don't want to be a menu for everybody, but equally, growth and storytelling can impact everybody, depending on how much they incorporate it. So there's kind of three different areas that I like to focus on, and I do my work in. So the first is growth within the business community, let's say. And this is where, so I'll give a couple of use case examples where I work with. One example is with a company that's scaling, really wants to scale at the moment, and they need to be supported fractionally by someone who has experience within the corporate environment, understands governance, compliance, understands as a business leader what's important with growing quickly, and to have that guidance and coaching support, as well as a bit of a hands-on effort. That's one example. Now, I bring in storytelling because much of the work that's done at that stage is about creating the next pitch. It is about setting the strategy. It is about recruiting and engaging, a good employee experience, all the things that communication and storytelling is a key part of, also overlaid with my experiences anyway. Another example is a team of people that want to develop their communication skills generally in what they do. In this particular example, a marketing department, and it will be a workshop introducing my background experiences, but actually more so how the Sprout model, which is kind of what's in my first book, can be applied to everyday communications interactions in order to lift the value of, or the currency of communication, essentially. So there's a couple of examples in those areas, plus one more in that specific area. We've got a technically brilliant individual, maybe slightly problematic on the communication front. Can you work with them to help them, coach them to improve that part? Because there's real value in what they bring. They just need to engage better with people in the business and externally. And those sorts of business, that's a scale up all the way through to a company with over 5,000 people. So it really kind of depends on the scenario that's there. The second kind of area for me is then what I call, it's more about grow yourself. And this is about personal growth. So this is more about an individual that is looking at either the way that they communicate or how they want to improve that. But actually, it's also about personal life choices and decisions, because taking the experiences I've had over the last couple of years, I've learned a lot and I've applied a lot. And so one individual in particular is working with me on a certain area centered around changing mindset, following it through and coaching them through that journey. So again, using stories, experiences, and storytelling to grow. And then the third area, which is, as I say, growing education, is working with education trusts and schools on a couple of books in particular that will be utilized within classroom environments so that teachers and children can work together to learn more about storytelling, expression, discussion, debate, and through the story of what it will be an 11-year-old Jamie, his own personal experiences and how that can be projected onto other children so that they can learn and sort of grow through that as well. So it's kind of, when people say to me, Jamie, oh, how can you help businesses grow? Do you go in, do you assess the strategy and support revenue? Can you suggest how to organize your markets and products of your audiences? Yes, functionally, I can do that. But it's also the other areas of growth that storytelling taps into that opens up. So they're the key areas, Simon, but actually much of it comes from conversations with people and listening and understanding and actually saying, yes, I can apply a growth and storytelling solution to that. Whether it would be speaking to your company, whether it would be coaching, whether it be a workshop, or whether it would be something completely unique. I've got the flexibility and the openness to apply myself accordingly now, not just the products that are on the shelf, before.
Well, thank you, Jamie. And as you're talking, a couple of quick questions I want to just add in before we move on. When it comes to storytelling, we're now in a world of AI, which probably wasn't there back in the corporate career.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that impacting your storytelling? Is that, is that becoming more and more of what you do? And the other thing I wanted to ask you about was your monthly newsletter.
Mm.
And I love the fact that it's called The Allotment, where ideas take
Yes, the
root,
allotment. Yeah.
where ideas take root and growth begins. I think
Yeah.
that's really good. But just something on before you can tell me about The Allotment as well and how that community is growing. But AI must be reaching your business too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think and it's an important topic. My reflection, so do I use AI on a day-to-day basis for me personally, or encourage the use of it with some of the customers? The answer is yes, I do. And I don't shy away from that. Absolutely. I think you have to evolve with the environment that surrounds you. But what I always say when it comes to AI is be the editor and not the edited. That for me is really important. So it's like any tool. I mean, don't get me wrong, AI is quite an exceptional tool. But with like any tool, when you apply it, you're still in control. You're choosing how you use it, you're choosing how you place it. What's really important is that you remain that editor. The moment you allow it to edit you to 100% replace you in your voice, in your narrative, in your story, for me, that's when you become subservient, and that's highly risky because you'll start to lose yourself. So I will always have a leadership on what I say, what I write, when I do it. Can I use AI to support the efficiency of that, to get research to help? Absolutely, yes, I can. And that makes a big difference for me. So that's my reflection on AI. I'd absolutely encourage it, but equally make sure you're leading it, you're editing it as you, the leader. The second key one, oh, yes, so around the allotment. And the allotment is, I mean, I love it. I mean, I kind of quite live close to allotments. Those that have read my first book, I talk about allotments in my past with my granddad. So it's a very special place for me. But the allotment is designed to bring kind of exclusive hints and tips directly from me to the community around storytelling scenarios or specific scenarios where you can apply real life story, real life action, real life tips, see real life benefits. The second is that I also incorporate stories and interviews from key people who bring their own experiences, and we apply a storytelling lens through it. So luckily, through my books, I've engaged with loads of different people, interviewed different people, and that's allowed me to capture brilliant content from them and apply it, exclusively through the newsletter as well. So it has been a really great experience so far. Early signups have been great, and I hope it to be a growing community of people that can take benefit from it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, look, let's move gears a little bit because we're coming sort of to the end of our time a little, but I want to ask you some important things. So, as well as the education, which you've kind of touched on a little bit, but the next 6 to 12 months for you, it sounds like you're obviously excited about what's happening. There's a lot of new areas popping up. But when I ask you about the next sort of year ahead, what are you thinking about? What's on your roadmap? What's on your horizon? Is there anything keeping you up at night, or what are you just hoping to achieve?
So I think if I look at the next 6 to 12 months, there's a couple of things. So I've got, tangibly, I've got a couple of children's books, as I mentioned, that are there. But actually, for me, it's taking this passion, taking what I offer, and it's making it financially sustainable. First and foremost, again, being very open as well to the audience, because I think when you make changes, when you do big leaps, that's great, and doing what you love is important. But you also have, everyone's context is different, right? But you have families to support, you have mortgages to pay, you have all these other things in life that you need to do. And so for me, this year is all about turning the value of me and what I offer into tangible value that's sustainable so that I can carry on this journey moving forward. So that really is the key thing for me this year. So if I was to jump on the podcast in 12 months' time, you said, Jamie, how's it going? Do you know, something's gone so well that I'm able to continue this passion, love to serve more people and to impact people and add value to people. That's what I'd love to be able to do in a year's time. And that's really, really the focus for me. And I think as well, aside from that, like any good marketing or product leader or business leader, It's about listening to that continual feedback that I get as I engage with people, iterate what I offer, and ensure that what I am giving is really solving problems and adding value to people as well. So those would be the two key areas to me: financially sustainable and evolving with great feedback from people.
Very good. And look, finally, two things.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you'd like to share with our worldwide audience today as sort of some parting thoughts?
Yeah.
And secondly, and really importantly, if people do want to connect with you, get their hands on the books, book you for a
Yeah.
speaking slot, or the work that you do, whether individually or from a company perspective, where do you want to point people to so they can reach out and connect, Jamie? So parting thoughts, and how do people get in touch?
Thanks. So I think parting thoughts to this. I think you said it earlier, and I say it everywhere I go. Stories change lives, and I genuinely would encourage anyone listening to embrace storytelling more in their day-to-day communications. You don't need a subscription. You don't need gym equipment. You don't need to do it at certain times of the day. It's completely free. And as long as you're having a communication interaction with another human being, whatever the medium, you have the opportunity to test, to learn, to iterate, and to grow. So I think, the more that people do that, the better, because genuinely, the more impact you make with your communications, it will make a positive difference to you and to the people around you, and it will grow you. And I think for me, that's really important. So that's probably my first thing to kind of share with people. And secondly, yeah, thank you for asking. So if people want to engage with me, if they want to buy the books, they're on Amazon, exclusively on Amazon. So you type in 28 bags of sprouts on Amazon, and that will pop up. I mean, don't worry, 28 bags of sprouts will not be delivered literally to your driveway or outside the house. That's a lot of sprouts, but the book certainly will. Same with Sprouting Happiness. You get the book on there and the journal that accompanies it as well. And finally, if people want to engage with me, more of my services, book me to speak or to just have a conversation. It's all the W's, jamie-mackenzie.com. Or LinkedIn. Search Jamie Mackenzie LinkedIn. If you see my face and some sprouts and a bit of green, you know you found the right person. So yeah, that's the best way for people to reach out.
Fantastic. Well, that brings us nicely to the end of this episode of the Global Discussion. I want to thank everybody who's been watching or listening to this episode around the world. I'm, of course, going to ask you to like, subscribe, follow, do all the things I need you to do to help support the Global Discussion and to help us grow. And hopefully you'll join me back here for some more conversations with creatives and leaders and thinkers just like Jamie. But Jamie, thanks for being on the show. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you today.
Simon, and thanks ever so much. And a final reminder, everybody, remember, stories change lives. Thank you.